Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Haron again. I know people are watching this program more and more because I get people that stop me on the street now and say, Brian, we really like your program. There's a lot of good information there, but do you have to sing? So tonight I didn't include any singing, but I can't promise I won't do it in the future because I get a fun out of doing it. So either me or my wife and I may sing again in the future. As far as the agenda is tonight, we'll have some comments, then notices, quite a bit of information, financial update because we're getting into budget season now and that's becoming more important. And then we're going to talk a bit about the selectmen meeting that was held on the 1st, 22nd, 08 of January, my birthday, and many other people in town's birthday too, I found out on the day. There'll be a major progress status report update. There'll be a major decision status board update, and then a short analysis of the meeting. Not too much to analyze this week. It was such a good meeting, but there are some comments to make. And then, if I get time, a bit about charter revision. And I will say that next time we will, next week, there won't be a selectmen meeting, so I'm going to spend almost the whole meeting on the charter revision and bring you all up to date on what's happening there. And I have plenty to do, as you'll see, if I get that far this week. I did submit a lot of papers for the public record this week, and I'd like to bring you up to date on that. We don't have many comments this week, but I do want to point out that on the quarterly anniversary of the election, which will be in or somewhere around February 6th, I'd like to do a quarterly report here on the program about the selectmen's campaign promises and their progress so far against those campaign promises. Now remember, that's kind of how they do it. The Harvard Business School teaches that you do a plan and then you do a quarterly report. So I'm going to get people used to quarterly reports here, and hopefully I'm hoping the town will be doing the same, similar thing. But we'll make a quarterly report and we'll keep you up to date throughout the year on the progress of these people on their campaign promises. Now, as I pointed out on the show previously, I don't think there were too many specific campaign promises from the Democrats, so I'm not expecting too much there. I'll probably touch on the photovoltaic stuff and one or two of the comments that one of the selectmen did make before the election. But the Republicans did make a lot of campaign promises, so I'll bring you up to date. If anybody's out there and they made campaign promises and they want to bring them to my attention from either party, then please do so. And I kind of hereby ask everybody for an update of what they promised and where they stand against it, and if they send it to me, I'll post it on the show. If not, I'll try to cobble one together myself, and we will do that once a quarter. Now, the next point I want to make is notices this week. The vision appraisal review of Lake waterfront access is progressing. The notices, I'm told today, will be out within days. The work is done. They have done the final look at things, and those notices will be going out. We thought last week they'd be out quicker, but I was told now they'll be out within days. All those that appeal their assessment with vision appraisal, and many people did, especially those around water bodies, and those that did not appeal, but as a result of somebody else's appeal, might have received some favorable treatment. Those that did not appeal, but received an adjustment on their appraisal, will receive new notices when the notices are sent out. Everybody else won't receive a new one. Only people who've had changes to their assessment will receive, or maybe no changes, but some information may be sent out. I don't know exactly what they're going to do there. There is still time to appeal to the Town of Winchester Board of Appeals if you desire, and you still don't like it when you get your assessment update. You can still appeal to the town, and just check with the assessor's office in Town Hall for information about that. The Highland Lake sewer hookups, I found out from the selectmen meeting, one of the updates there. The Highland Lake sewer hookups were due for completion in the year 2005, and as usual in the town of Winchester, we're always kind of late in getting things done, but so about 15 residents remain to be done. Everybody didn't have to hook up to the sewer many years ago when they put them in, because if they had brand new septic tanks or something like that, they were given an extension. But that time is up now, and the letters will be going out soon. I think they're from the Water and Sewer Commission, I'm pretty sure, but there'll be somebody in the town of Winchester that'll be sending out letters to the people that have yet to bring up their hook up to the sewer that are supposed to. So that'll be between you and the sewer people. But I did think I would bring it to your attention. Applications for the elderly tax exemptions, and we'll talk a bit more about that when we get into the selectmen meeting stuff. For tax exemptions will be due February 1 through March 15th. You can sign up. You get an application after February 1. Don't bother the people before then because they're busy on all this tax stuff and everything and reval. But after February 1, you can get an application. You can find out from the assessor's office exactly what the rules are, fill out an application, and go with that. So anytime after February 1, you can do that. Now I want to do tonight a financial update because we are getting near the budget. I can't do it tonight. I don't have time to go into the full budget plan, but I will have time maybe next week or some other time, and I'll go over what the dates are for approaching this budget. But the first thing we always have to show here is the upward pressure on the budget, and the upward pressure on the budget isn't changing too much here from my viewpoint because I only deal with public information, but we still have the debt carryover from last year, which will be $428,765. We're anticipating, and we'll talk more again about this later, but we're anticipating another 3% increase for the town, which is about 588,080. And then for the Newfield Road, we have our part of the to pay on the grant we had received there. That'll probably happen next year. 57,400 brings it up to 1,074,245, or roughly 1.83 mils, going by this existing mill rate we're on now, or 5.33%. And don't forget, for those who are getting increases because of the reval, not everybody is, but many people are. Don't forget you have to add the reval increases to that. There are other considerations that have to be taken into consideration as far as upwards pressure are concerned. I didn't calculate this into the percentage, but the ECS grant last year, the grant we get from the state for the schools and things, was more than we had received in the past and more than we expected there. So last year we received $600,000 or so, give or take a little bit. And this year, in the plan from the state, is $329,000. So we'll be short there, roughly $275,000 this year. That'll put pressure on us to make up that difference if we indeed need the money, which we probably will. So now that could change. The state finds out they got a lot of money in their coffers, and they want to spend more money in the give more money to us, then we'll receive more than $329,000. We'll know that around budget, towards the when the new budget is approved. Then we'll know roughly when we get all the state information up to date. We'll know what that number is. But there is some pressure there. And then I put a bunch of question marks because we don't know some of the other things that are happening behind the scenes in the town. And we will know on March 15th when we get the new budget presented to us by the town, to the selectmen by the town manager. Before I go any further, I'd like to say that again this week I have in back of me throughout the whole program this week, whenever you see me, you'll also see the picture of the Wall of America, which is coming into town down here. Ellen Griesendeck, the artist, is and Barbara DeBellis, who heads up the operation in this town, are going for permits in a month or so through planning and zoning and inland wetlands, and are starting on their long march to get this building renovated in town on Whiting Avenue, and I don't know if it's a street or an avenue, but on Whiting Avenue or street, and they're going to add 2 floors to that building, and they're going to renovate it, and they're going to do a lot of work on the park side and everything, and it's going to be a really big addition to the town. And myself being a computer person and knowing what worldwide networks can do and worldwide data access what the computers will do, I do really appreciate what the future can be for that exercise, and also for the Tort Museum, which is going to be similar. They're going to have a database that can be accessed all over the world by anybody, and they're going to have a lot of information in those databases, and it's going to bring a lot of attention to our town. It's going to bring a lot of students and visitors and all kinds of people in to see these exhibits, and these things are going to be very interesting. So you should try to find out more about them. I'll be plugging them on here as much as I can and having pictures because I believe in these things. I think they're a good addition to this area, and they're going to help make Winsted a destination, which is their intention, and for a lot of people around the world and around the United States and around New England. So you'll see that picture. It's a beautiful picture, and it's a lot of colorful, and I think it adds a lot. So the next thing I want to point out is capital. Part of the financial stuff is the capital, and that is the major capital is all I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about the smaller capital, but the major capital in 2007-08 was the $1,300,000 Main Street grant, and that's an approximation. It's not the right pennies and dollars there, but it's pretty close. I don't think much work has been done on that yet. The state will pay roughly $1,040,000 of that amount, and we, the town, will have to match with $260,000. So that'll probably happen maybe next year. I don't know exactly what the time frame is, but you know, it's coming up, and over the next year or two they'll be fixing up the rest of Main Street and expending that money and getting some revenue from the state to help. Then there's the steep grant, which is $478,000 this year. That was a grant for the park. I think it's called Green Park down there, but by the university. And most of that money comes from the state. I think it's almost 100%, if not 100%, comes from the state. So that's a big help to us because we locally don't get taxed for that, except for taxes we pay for the state, of course. Nothing's free. But now, as for 2008, 2009 budget, then we have for capital, we have at least, and there's probably more, but we have at least the Pearson School we're looking at. Nobody knows yet exactly what that's going to cost, but we are limited to the size of the grant we can get from the state for that. And I'm roughly putting on here $900,000. It's somewhere in that area. $900,000 to $1 million is all we can get in 1 year from the state to help with the school. Get about a 68%. I use 68% here because I'm told that number is about right now for the grant money, and so the state would pay about $612,000 of that, one way or the other, and we the town would have to pony up $288,000 one way or another. So that's a little bit of upward pressure on the capital side for next year. I just want to repeat again the fund balance. We went through this on previous shows, and I'll keep going through it because every time I watch a selectman meeting or talk to anybody, there's always confusion about the fund balance. So I usually go over and talk to the finance director and try to get some approximation of what the numbers are. And presently we have about $1,342,709. Now this is a couple weeks old, this data, but it's probably pretty accurate. And of which $1,047,055 is available for use. The remainder is reserved for encumbrances such as purchase orders issued before June 3rd of this year, 2007, and the related goods and services had not been received yet. So that's kind of where we stand there. The fund balance is about 3.63% of operating revenue, our operating revenue now. And our auditor recommends a range of about 5 to 15%. So you can see we're a little bit below that. Moody's, who is the credit rating for the towns and municipalities, depends upon a reasonable amount in the fund balance for interest rate, for the accreditation they give you. And they say they prefer to see about 8 to 10% of operating revenue in the fund balance. So by these numbers, our fund balance is low, and it's not advantageous to us when we go to get to borrow money and for the accreditation of our town in that respect. Now, what I do want to say, and I'm going to say as a result of the last selectmen meeting, we'll be going through that when I get to the selectmen portion, but I want to talk about it now in the financial section. I've got a slide which says hallelujah, and boy did I have a tough time finding out how to spell hallelujah, but I did find it in the end. It's spelled right, so no letters, please, about the spelling of hallelujah. But for the 2008-2009 budget, the selectmen have made what I consider to be another great business-like recommendation. I'm really tickled pink with this. I think they did the right thing here, and they're going in the right direction, and it's going to be a big improvement on the past. This was voted in by this Board of Selectmen just in the last meeting. With a very high upwards pressure on the budget for next fiscal year, as I just showed you, they have voted to direct the town manager to plan for a 3% or less increase in the town budget and the school bottom line for the 2008-2009 budget. I think that's a top-down approach. That's the way most businesses operate. They try to get a feel for what revenue is coming into town, and then they say, hey, that's the revenue we're going to have. This better be the expenses we incur. So that's what they're doing here, and it's a top-down approach instead of the bottom-up approaches we've had over the ever since I've been around, the last 5 or 6 years, where people come in with an 8% or a 7% budget, and then the selectmen sit around chopping it back, arguing and fighting and having meetings, public open hearing meetings, and there's all kinds of acrimony. And this time they've given the direction, they've set the policy. This is the way they run their businesses and should be running the town. A monumental decision. Good for them. Good for them. This is why you voted them into office. They just gave policy and direction to the town manager. That's their job, the selectmen, to give policy and direction to the town manager. It's the town manager's job to deal with the non-policy issue of putting together the budget and running the town from day to day and from week to week, month to month, and year to year. They have also requested the town manager to outline and prioritize any additional necessary needs for consideration should there be any additional funds available. So if we see for one reason or another that we're going to have additional funds available, then they want to know from the town manager what's the best way to use these and get he and his managers and the school managers to put up in priority order the things that they would like to spend any extra money on, and then they may even have to go to the taxpayers for some of it, like the Pearson School or something like that. But at least they'll be able to go and say, here's what we're going to spend the money on and why we need it. So that's what they've asked him to do. Any additions that come in will be earmarked for these specific needs if the taxpayers approve. And I don't know whether they'll have to go to the taxpayers or not. They usually do, and my guess is they probably will again this year. Now, when I say they've directed the town manager to come in with a 3% on average overall budget, that means that if some things are over in the budget, like say salaries or something, then something else has to give. So they have to look, and they have to look at the priorities throughout the town and the schools, and they have to make trade-offs. Of course, the town can only deal with the bottom line. The Board of Education will have to do the school work for the K through 8 in Gilbert, but they're plenty capable of doing that. Of course, there's no guarantee that the town manager and his team or the schools will be able to achieve this 3% objective. This is management by objectives and exceptions. So what happens is they'll do their best, and then they'll come back with the best they think they can do, and then there might be some head shaking and scratching there to try to get this back, and maybe in the end they'll have a 4 or 5% increase or a 1 or 2% increase. Nobody knows, but time will tell. And on March 15th, we'll have a pretty good idea, because that's when the town manager has to present his budget to the selectmen. This, again, is management by objective and management by exception, kind of what you learn at Harvard Business School. I didn't go there, but I studied a lot of the books and talked to a lot of people who did. And it's a top-down professional approach. It stops a lot of the scurrying around, and hope we can get there with fewer referendums. And everybody should then have a pretty good idea what's in the budget and why, and when they do go to referendum, they can vote as they see fit. Let's hope that it works here. This is the first year. Usually it takes a few years for this type of an approach for everybody to sink in and say they really mean business and they really mean 3%. Usually they come back with 4 or 5% thinking you really didn't mean 3%, but over time when they see that it's important, then they'll be coming in more with what the policy and the direction is, and there'll be less overhead managing it back. And the one thing I'd like to say here about this is that these selectmen mean business. They're businessmen and they mean business, and what they have to do is manage the town as tightly and as practically as possible until we can get this revenue in that's coming, if it ever comes, until we can get this additional revenue and additional taxpayers in and these new developments that are in the works and going through the land use boards and up and down the corridor there. We need to be very, very diligent in how we spend money. Okay, now I'm going to talk a bit about the selectmen meeting. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm a little backwards this week because it's such good news. I thought it was a wonderful meeting with a few exceptions, which I'll point out tonight. But basically, the policy versus non-policy discussions in the meeting were wonderful. I can't say more about it. There were 11 policy discussions, and there was one that wasn't policy. And the one that wasn't policy was the town manager's report, which isn't supposed to be policy. That's supposed to be day-to-day management. So that's what was happening there. Sometimes some questions about policy will come up in there. But so we had a perfect record this meeting. I want to thank everybody for that. And with the exceptions of some other things that went on in the meeting, this part of it went exceptionally well and probably can't be improved upon because it's perfect, 11-1. It'll always be one. As long as we have a town manager report, we'll always have one non-policy discussion. Now, the town manager's report, as I'll go through later, is a bunch of little things he reports on. So, but I only count it as one, the town manager's report. If he had any policy discussion, then I'd probably separate it out. But there weren't any. So thank you very much, selectmen and town manager, for sticking to your job, dealing with the policy and the one non-policy discussion. Business-like, can't improve much on that. It was an excellent business-like meeting. We're up now to 6 business-like meetings. I'm not saying it wasn't a bit of a rocky meeting. We'll talk about that later, but it was a business-like meeting. There was no finger pointing. There was no snarling. There were no snide remarks. It was there were exchanges of information and questioning, and within reason, I thought that wasn't too bad. I do have some comments to make later about that, but thank you again, selectmen and town manager, for having a business-like meeting. There's nothing worse than having taxpayers and people in town, children, and people in town see adults, selectmen, elected officers bickering in a selectmen meeting. It's not good, and this composure we've had in the last 6 meetings has been a big improvement. Thank you. Now, as far as the selectmen meeting on my birthday, I'll just go through quickly and show you all this red here means policy. So, sell Norcross Road, a motion carried. They had a special meeting for that. That wasn't done during a selectmen meeting, but they had a meeting, and about 40 people, I guess, 30, 40 people showed up, and they voted to sell the Norcross Road, which I think is good. It puts it on the tax roll, makes everybody happy, and we're off and running. There was the approval of the minutes. That has to happen each time. There was the planimetrics presentation. I really didn't think that was necessary, but I did give it a red because it is on the critical path for the corridor, and we do need to get it done. Preferably, I wouldn't have had that in there, and I'll talk more about that later. Public comment, that's important. We have to do that. Boards and commissions. There was no public comment, by the way. This is the first time I can ever remember when nobody got up and spoke, unless I didn't hear it right. And I taped it, and I watched it a couple times afterwards, and I didn't see any public comment. Then boards and commissions, there were the reports on the boards and commissions, the town manager's report, which was very good and improves at each meeting, and we get more and more good information there from the town manager. Cary Avenue, They voted 5-2 to sell that to the highest bidder. There were two bids and one no bid. I think this was the one that came in without one of the bids wasn't acceptable. It didn't have a price on it or something. But anyway, 5-2 to sell it, put it on the tax rolls. There will be a special meeting. That was voted on unanimously. And that'll be 7 p.m. on March 3rd. So anybody who's interested and wants to vote yay or nay on selling that Cary Avenue can show up on March 3rd to the special meeting. That's just before, I think, the selectmen meeting. I'm not positive there, but I think so. There was police fund transfer. Remember, some of these reds are really charter type things because these selectmen are also the finance committee, so they have to approve some of these minor things that normally probably would be done by a finance committee in a different type of management system. They had approved some collector fund rebates. There was a secretarial support for the charter revision committee, and that was unanimously approved, $500, so they could have a secretary in that meeting. So far it's been operating without a secretary, except the town clerk did help one time on one of the meetings. 08-09 budget, that's where we have this 3% overall direction to the schools and to the town to try to come in with your budget 3% or less. If it's 1%, hoop-de-doo. If it's 2%, that's pretty good. If it's 3%, that's kind of what the policy and direction is. Please try to come in under that according to the selectmen say, if you can. That was unanimously voted by all 7. These U's all mean unanimous. Appoint a new labor attorney. They did go into a private session and they appointed a new labor attorney, Victor M. Michel of Torrington, and that was unanimously done as well. We're going to save $65 an hour on our bills there, plus maybe get some other features from having a new labor attorney. Sometimes when you bring in a new person, things happen and things get approached in a different way that may be more beneficial than perhaps the last. There's no guarantee on that, but you never know. Next is other interesting thing happened, which I'll speak a bit more in the comments later. A tax deferral program for the elderly that's been on the table for many meetings, but they have decided to try to make it even better for the elderly people than perhaps it was in the past plans. So we don't know whether that'll happen or not, but that's one of the things that they'll be looking at. And then there was a vote for St. Joseph's to waive some permit fees for them, although they are going to charge them some small amount of money for having the inspectors go there and things like that. So that was that. So again, I'll put up the colors. This is the St. Joseph's vote was 6 in favor, nobody against, and 1 abstention, and that was from the mayor because he is chairman of the school building committee down at St. Joseph's School, so he abstained on this vote. But red is for policy, green non-policy, and I put in purple for information or public relations type things. Next is the major status report. That hasn't changed much this time. We're still moving ahead. We've got the red, which is finished. The blues are in progress. It's the same as we've always had this chart. The yellow are ones that haven't started yet, and or at least they haven't started in public. Maybe they're doing it in private, but I don't know about it. And then red means achieved, blue means in progress, and yellow means not yet started. And then I'm not going to go through all the important decisions here as I didn't last time, but I do want to take you through. There's about, I don't know, 40, well, they're up in the 50s now, I think, here. So since the election, we have done on these decisions, we're up in the 50s, but okay, important decisions. These are all here are done already. These here, there's still a couple on the second page. Number 13, resolve Pearson ADA and OSHA infractions, that's not done yet. There's the resolve recreational director as soon as practical, that's not started yet. That may happen in the next budget, may not. Then there's 15, 16, and 17 haven't started yet. These are campaign commitments that the Republicans made. Those transfer to school building maintenance, resolve part-time building inspector, resolve part-time fire marshal. These are budget type issues that may or may not happen in the next budget. Then there's the Winsted Fire Department, that all happened. These are all red. They all happened. These all happened. These all happened. To show you, a lot of decisions have been made here. And these all happened, except for the town manager to come back to the board with a recommendation regarding the public works contract. I think they're still negotiating that. I haven't seen a finish there. But on the status board, that's not done yet. It's in process. These all happened. If anybody ever wants any detail on this, I can provide it to you. Let me know. Okay, here's the ones that happened this week. Starting here, sell North Cross Road, sell Cary Avenue. I left that in blue because we still got that special meeting for that coming up in March. These are all done. Tax deferral for elderly is still in the works, and that's being re-looked at from a different viewpoint now. Talk about that later, I hope, if I get time. And then, let's say St. Joseph's School. Red means complete, blue in progress, yellow not yet started. So we're now up to 55 decisions made since these guys came into office, and these ladies, this lady and these selectmen came into office, and we're all very, very happy that things are getting. Now, I just want to make a couple points here on this that you can probably see yourself when you watch the selectmen meetings, and I encourage you to do watch the selectmen meetings or the reruns of the selectmen meetings that are on Channel 13 on Wednesdays and Saturdays. You can check their check for the time on their bulletin board on TV. But basically, there's some very subtle things happening in the selectmen meeting that you probably don't even notice, but I notice because that's my business to notice those things, and I'm sure you might notice some of them. But there are few things being tabled anymore. There are attempts to table things, but they don't usually succeed because the tabling is almost nil now. And we don't table many issues till the following meeting or following meetings. There are one or two that are still tabled, and there always will be some that are tabled, but nowhere near like it used to be in the past. So decisions are getting made. That's why you see all these red marks on all these actions and decisions, because they're getting made from week to week, from meeting to meeting, and they're happening. And some of them are very, very major decisions that are going to have a big effect on this town in the future. So we have 2 or 3 of those major decisions already just in the last 2.5 months. So they're very good. The other thing I'd like to point out is, and we'll talk a bit about it here in passing, but they did make a good decision finally in the meeting this week to say a little procedure they have now for nominating people for the commissions. There's a lot of arguing about that in meetings and discussions about procedure. Well, that's over now. So that happened in this meeting, and that's the kind of thing you want to watch for when you watch these things. Are they sticking to policy? Are they moving things along? Are they making decisions? And are they moving along things for good reason and not stalling things and not waiting, put them off, or anything like that. So I see a big improvement there, and I watch for it very carefully. So now, comments on this last meeting. These are Brian's comments, Brian's views only, not the selectmen's views, not anybody else's, and they might not agree with any of this, but that's why I'm here and spending my time on this, to give the viewpoint from my past. I don't think any selectmen's my age, so there used to be one my age, but I don't think there are any anymore. So I do have a little bit to offer. So number one, the plan and metrics presentation was brief. Thank God for that. The guy only talked for 5 minutes on his presentation. I thought it was going to be an hour like the photovoltaic one was or whatever. But he was very short and quick and brief, and I thought that was good. The questioning was painful, very painful. At the selectman level, we shouldn't have had anywhere near as much time spent on the questioning and the answering, and there was all kinds of discussion that was too long and confusing for this type of meeting. Now, all that discussion would have been wonderful if it weren't in the selectmen meeting. Shouldn't have been there, because most of it had nothing to do with policy whatsoever. Most of it was not policy stuff. Discussion did unearth some confusion, of course. Whenever you talk about these things in Winsted, some confusion. You think things are behind you, but they're not. New confusion pops up, and that may be resolved soon. That confusion. There was a commitment in the meeting to resolve the issue that was outstanding one way or the other, or get in and discuss it and get it resolved. So I'm happy to see that. We need to get the selectman letter out to the DOE for the enterprise corridor if we want to expedite profitable revenue into the town. I'll keep repeating this. We don't have many other options for getting profitable revenue into the town. Even the Wall of America and the Tort Museum won't be really adding a lot to the tax base. They will be adding some to the tax base, but nothing like the development will add. And now the Wall of America and the Tort Museum will be bringing a lot of people to town, and they'll be spending a lot of money in various ways in this town. But and they're very, very good for the town. So I don't want to demean them in any way. But to really get the increase in the profitable increase in the tax base, we need more taxpayers, and we need more taxpayers that don't cost the town too much to maintain. So I'll agree that the long-term plan for the plan of conservation development should be done correctly in an evolutionary manner and funded properly. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. So that's what that was about. At this time, the total cost, as estimated in that selectment meeting, the total cost of the plan is estimated to be $75,000 to $150,000, plus the mapping, which is funded and underway now. They have to do a lot of mapping with modern techniques that'll help us with this plan, and that's already in the process and already, I guess, has been funded. The boards and commissions, the procedure for appointing commission members was expeditiously decided. Thank God for that. This agreement will save time, and I hope more history lessons. You know, we keep getting these history lessons. Here's how we used to do it in the past. I get those all over the world wherever I go. Whenever people are trying to change and try new things, instead of trying to understand and work with that, people always want to try to do things the way they used to do them. That's human nature, not specific to Winsted or Connecticut or New England or America. It's all over the world. And I've heard that question, how things used to be done in the past, in every language that you can imagine. So it exists everywhere. In my opinion, one selectman from each party should have a list of desired appointees in his back pocket. They should know exactly who they want to appoint to every commission when a position becomes available. So they should have a list in their back pocket of desired appointees for all commissions available at all times. And when a new vote is necessary, they will be prepared to nominate without delay. So if we say, okay, there's a new position open on a commission, and we want to vote for it tonight, everybody pulls out their little list from their back pocket, and they propose their candidate. And then the people vote on it, and they get it done. They don't have to wait 2 weeks or a month to get a letter in and think about it and do that kind of thing. So I'm glad to see that happened. That's one of the things the businessmen have to offer. They must make rapid decisions and keep things moving. And there are ways to get it done to satisfy everybody. And this is one way to make it work. Have a list in your back pocket, prepare it in advance, talk to everybody else in your party, make sure they agree, do whatever you have to do, and then be prepared when the opening comes to fill it, because these commissions do need their openings filled, and they need them filled kind of rapidly. So we need to move on. The steep grant application for Green Park is due February 28th, and that looks like people are moving on. The steep grant's good stuff because there's not much that we have to pay. Most of it comes as a grant. So, you know, the town part of it is, I don't know about this one because I haven't examined it that closely, but we can do a lot more work on Green Park if we get this. The committee is already working on it. They have defined priorities, we're told at the meeting, and they're working on the application with the town manager and with the director of planning, town planning and whatever it's called nowadays, and they're all working together as a team to come up with a good list of priorities, get this grant money so they can do more work on Green Park. And then that's a nice area of the town where the university is and everything, and that's going to be very good for us. The town manager's report was excellent again. It's getting better each time. The initial budget process time scale was handed out. I do have one here, but we're not going to have time tonight to go through it. Maybe some other time we will. And I'll do that, but basically it's designed to get us to a budget to the selectmen and then agreed through the referendum in time for next fiscal year. So there is a plan for that now. It's an initial plan. It might change a little, but there's a lot of meetings scheduled, meetings with the Board of Education, meetings, public hearings, meetings internally, all kinds of things, and they're all in a time scale, and there's a plan for it, and anybody can get a copy of it from the town manager's office, and I'll try to go through it one time on this show if I can. An OSHA inspection happened a few months ago, and yielded a few small fines and some minimal problems. They will be fixed by March 3rd. The fine was in the area of $1,000 or so. That will be paid, and they decided, selectmen and town manager actually decided that with his managers that it would be better to just go ahead and pay the fine than try to contest it, because that would probably cost more than paying the fine in their estimation. The Aurora State payments, they owe us, Aurora State owes us about $48,000. Now, we've heard about that for about a year or so, or how long ever they've owed us this $40,000. It's come up to the selectmen meeting many times, and but what we haven't heard about is that the town manager pointed out that these may be offset by $30,000 or $35,000, and this may be true or false. I don't know. I do trust the town manager, but he still has more investigating to do. That they already have $30,000 to $35,000 in our trust that they've paid in here that we owe them. So maybe this will end up being closer to a wash, or at least a lot less than we thought it would be. So we don't count on the $48,000. The town manager now will get together with all the people, the finance director, the various heads of the commissions and all, and they'll figure out exactly where we stand with the developer, and then they'll proceed to get whatever money he still owes us from him. And what I say is thank you, selectmen and town manager. This political hobby horse has been around for a long time now, and we're finally finding out the facts. And what I'm saying is that people should always try to point out both sides of a situation, and not only the side that's most advantageous to them, their party, or their cause. So let's always try to get both sides on the table. Let's let everybody know the balanced view thing, and if we don't know it, don't say anything until we do know it, and then let's be fair to the developers. They're spending a lot of money. I think this developer spent close to $300,000 here on helping us to review his plans, and that's pretty darn good, and we should be thankful for that and work as well as we can and as fairly as we can here. The town manager is doing a good job getting those facts, and I appreciate it. The spending freeze is still in force, and the spending for this year seems under control. Cary Avenue is finally getting resolved. A vote will be held as planned on March 3rd, town meeting. There were 3 responsive bids. One wasn't. There were 3 bids. One wasn't responsive because they didn't have, I guess they didn't put in the amount they wanted to bid or something like that. Union issues and a labor attorney were discussed in an executive session. We didn't see that. That was about 45 minutes. And then as a result, the new labor attorney, Victor M. Michel from Torrington, Connecticut, was appointed by unanimous consent. In addition to this, in addition to any other advantages, this will probably save the town 30% on labor costs in the labor area, and we do spend a lot of money in the labor area on attorneys, so this could be a significant savings for us if it turns out to be true. We know the cost per hour is going to be less. We just don't know how many hours we're going to need to spend on labor issues. But there is a policy in town that attorneys shouldn't be used without the consent of the town manager, and we should try to do as much as we can without attorneys, and let the managers do as much as they can, and then use attorneys only where really necessary to do it. The tax deferral plan for senior citizens was discussed, and an attempt is going to be made, and I want to spend a little bit of time on that. An attempt is going to be made to increase. One of the problems with the tax deferral plans are that they probably don't get enough of a big enough bite on there to make it worth their while. And one of the problems is that and this wasn't talked about at the selectmen meeting, but I know from getting involved in it that the limits are kind of low, and that if you make a certain amount of money, then you're not eligible for these elderly tax things. And perhaps these limits need to be adjusted for inflation. But they're going to look into this. They're going to check with the state. The town manager is. He's going to check with the state, and he's going to deal with the assessor's office and everybody else, and he's going to try to come back to the selectmen with a proposal for what he considers to be a better approach to giving these tax deferral plans, so they're more beneficial to people, and more people sign up, and more people will benefit from them. And the selectmen have backed this approach, and time will tell if they can do anything. We are limited to a certain extent in some ways, and don't forget that any money that we don't get, we, one way or another, must make up for in our budget. So, but I think there's good news coming, we hope anyway, for the senior citizens, and I hope that that'll happen. So, all in all, this was a very successful selectmen meeting. There were some things towards the end that I didn't like too well. When I don't like to see people squabbling over some buildings in town that maybe aren't in pristine shape and do have problems. That should be kept outside the meeting. They're and for due respect, I think, for the building owners, and we should try to deal with the town manager. Should try to deal with these issues and not deal with them in a select meeting. Now, I don't blame the town manager for this, because he isn't the one who brings these things up. It's the selectmen who bring them up, and when they bring up these points, then in front of television, in front of the whole town, some of these I think should be personally handled confidentially, and it's all part of my whole program to try to make the town more hospitable for people. It's, you know, we're trying to get people in town are trying to sell their buildings, they're trying to get money to improve their buildings. There's all kinds of things happening here, and bad publicity doesn't help a bit. Now, while I'm talking about that, I must say that I've noticed in the newspapers in the last month or so that there's a lot less bickering between political parties in town, one aspect against the other, in the newspapers. And I think that's because more people are saying no comment, and I really appreciate that, and I hope it keeps up. But the less we the less we point fingers in the newspapers at each other in town here and give bad publicity to the town, the better it is. So try to say no comment whenever you can. Now, I have maybe 8 minutes left, so what I want to talk about now is the Charter Revision Commission. I'm not going to talk too much about it, because next week I'm going to devote the whole program to it. But the Charter Revision Commission met for the third time on January 22nd, my birthday, and it met past my bedtime, but I took a nap in the afternoon so I could be there at 6:30. Meeting went on till about 7:45. The first thing I'd like to do is my disclaimer. It was on at the beginning of the show. I'm on the Charter Revision Commission, and any comments I make in this meeting are not the comments of the Charter Revision Commission, but they are comments of Brian O'Haron as an individual. So when there is official information from the Charter Revision Committee, I'll be happy to pass it on. But right now, these are just purely my own comments. The third meeting was held on January 22nd. The next 4 meetings are tentatively scheduled for February 12th, February 27th, March the 11th, and March the 26th, all in the town hall at 7 p.m. Now, obviously, if there's a snowstorm or something else comes up, we might want to change one of the dates. But until you hear from further notice, those are the dates for the next 4 meetings. And I guess somewhere along the line there, they'll set the meeting for the times for other meetings. And at the last meeting, I entered into, as I said I would on my program last week, I entered into the record, public record, the following papers into the public record for discussion and consideration. Now, some of them I went over with you last week, one of them I didn't. But number 1, I sent a letter to the commissioners requesting A, an overlapping terms for elected officials, B, review of the state statutes to see if it is possible to eliminate budget overlap between the town and the schools. Wherever there's plenty of budget overlap, we might have to stay with it. We might not be able to do anything about it. But I would like to have the 3 lawyers on the commission have a look at that and see if there's anything we can do. That's been a bone of contention around here for 20 years. So if there's anything we can do to eliminate some of this overlap in the budget between these areas, it'd be helpful. Next is C is add 5-year revenue and budget projections in addition to the state statute requiring 5-year capital projections. So we want 5-year revenue. I want 5-year revenue and budget projections. This may not happen, may not get into the charter. Other people might not agree with it, might not get voted for at the referendum, might not even get that far. But I've submitted it. The possibility, number D, the possibility of mandating guidelines for Inland Wetland Commission and ZBA. I think where legal, if we can give more guidelines there from those commissions, it'll be easier on the taxpayers, and it'll be easier on everybody. It'll be easier on the commissioners, be easier on the town. We'll be able to move faster. We'll be able to have less angst and less aggravation, and I think that's a worthwhile thing to do. Again, it may never happen, but I've asked for it. Right now, it's pretty bad in some of those areas. People don't know what's expected of them when they go to these commission meetings, and therefore things are drawn out, and there's a lot of frustration, dissatisfaction that maybe we can improve on. I wanted to just put this in because I'm results orientated, as you know from my program. Change the words administer and supervise, which are bureaucratic words, bureaucracy words. They're used in bureaucracies to avoid results orientated words like manage and get things done and do. So we want more of those kind of words. So I submitted that request in. May not happen, but I did try. And next, I submitted a draft of an unpriorities list of the charter revision suggestions submitted at the public hearing, sorted into approximate major charter classifications. All these papers are available in the public record if you want to see them. That's just, I listened to the disc, the CD, and I tried to catch everything. I might have missed one or two things, and people can correct me if they don't see them in there. And then what I did was, number 3, I put together a draft of possible priorities for discussing the mayoral form of government. And I submitted a list of what I consider the priorities that we can address these. The rest of the commission may not agree with them. They might get changed upside down. They may be changed inside out. But that's a starting point, and that's something we can all discuss and we can start to work from. I also submitted a draft for discussion purposes of pros and cons that I had on the paper on the program last week for the comparison of the mayoral versus town manager form of governments. And that draft has been submitted. Everybody can get a copy of it. Anybody who wants can get it from the public record. I put in a comparison for discussion purposes that I talked about on the program for the discussion purpose of the history of Winston's town manager form and Torrington's form over the last 46 years. Winston, 46 years, Torrington, 52 years. That lists all the mayors and all the town managers and all the interim town managers and gives it their time frames and their average length of stays. I went over that on the program. I also submitted a draft for discussion purposes of efficient meeting suggestions because people have told me that since I put out efficient meeting suggestions for other meetings in town that we probably should have one for any meeting I attend, so I put it in with 4 very, very, very senior and responsible people, so I think we're going to have pretty efficient meetings. They already did set a deadline for the time frame, and they set a time frame for the public comment section, which is about 15 minutes at every meeting. Public can comment at every meeting. And lastly, and something I haven't talked about on this program, but I will next week, is a rough initial draft for discussion purposes of the beginning of a comparison for the elected mayor, elected city council form of government as used in Torrington versus the elected selectman appointed town manager form of government as used in Winston. I picked Torrington because it is a mayoral form, it is close, I can go to all the meetings, and I'm going to do that starting next week. I'm going to go to their meetings, I'm going to analyze their meetings, and I'm just going to keep working on trying to understand better how this mayoral form works. It's my contention that most other mayoral forms will probably, larger, smaller, intermediate, will probably work similar, and the other commission members are going to be looking into that as well. And then both organization charts. I only have a couple minutes left, but I'll just give you the bottom line quickly, the difference between the two, and that is that ours has the town manager in the middle of the organization and subject to much micromanagement by other people on top of him and around him. The Torrington one has their mayor right up at the top, responsible to the electors Nobody to micromanage him. They're all below one way or the other. And that's kind of the bottom line there. So with that, I say it's past my bedtime, and thank you for watching. Remember, next week we're going to talk more about the Charter Revision Commission, and I'm going to go through in detail the paper that I submitted on the comparison between the two towns. Thank you.